Hey, listen, the president is in Israel right now. Thought there'd be a good day to check with an Ambassador John Bolton. He's on the Newsmaker hotline right now. Ambassador Bolton, Syria might be using chemical weapons. Iran moving day by day closer to developing nuclear weapons. It would seem in that environment that there was never a more critical time to have a strong relationship with our ally Israel, and yet it's hard to remember a time when that relationship has been more strained.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and I think that this particular visit is one where the political symbolism that we see, the photo opportunities and so on, are about as divorced from the reality of the private discussions as you can imagine. This is Obama's first presidential visit to Israel, and he's going on his terms. He's passed his re-election bid. He doesn't have to worry about any downside domestically in the United States. So the message he's going to convey in private, is conveying in private, I think, to Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders is, number one, don't even think about doing anything militarily about the Iranian nuclear weapons program, and number two, now it's time to make more concessions to the Palestinians. You know, a lot of people, I think, are already confused and deceived by the backslapping and so on that we've seen in public. Look, both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama benefit by that. They're both professional politicians. They know exactly what they're doing. This doesn't change anything in the underlying disagreements on grand strategy between the two of them.
Ambassador Bolton, thanks for joining us this morning. As we just saw images about half an hour ago of Marine One landing in the West Bank so that the president can meet with the Palestinian authorities, and word came out that just as that was happening, 2 rockets got fired from the Hamas thugs in Gaza into Israeli territory. One landed in a courtyard of a home. Thankfully, there were no injuries. But isn't this exactly where the president is sort of has a vulnerable spot, where he's dealing with the Palestinians on one hand, but at the same time over in Gaza, they have to deal with a constant rain of attacks with rockets coming into their homes.
Yeah, I mean, this should be a reminder to the president that Israel lives in a tough neighborhood and that's why they're so concerned about their security. And it's ironic, meeting with the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, who has no control whatever over Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And if he had to meet Hamas in an election, he'd probably lose, not only in Gaza, but on the West Bank as well. You know, what Obama should be saying to Abbas is, you've got to stop this campaign for Palestinian membership in the United Nations, and you've otherwise got to shape up and try and be in a position where you actually represent the Palestinian people. I don't think that's the message he's going to convey. And I'll tell you, all of this rhetoric about how we've got Israel's back and this eternal relationship and so on and so forth, I think the president's going to expect something from Israel in return. This is one way for him now to justify, for example, more concessions from Israel to the Palestinians.
All right, so we hear that Iran may be a year away from developing a nuclear weapon. President said yesterday that all options are still on the table. Do you think he has the political will to do what might really need to be done there?
No, I don't. I think this rhetoric about all options on the table is just that. And I think that's what the mullahs in Iran believe. I think that's what Netanyahu believes. In fact, yesterday, and I just don't want to parse words here, but the president said he would do what it takes to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. That's even weaker than all options on the table. He didn't say do whatever it takes, or he didn't say Iran is not going to get nuclear weapons. We're going to do what he wants to do, which is negotiate with Iran. And in fact, we've got proposals on the table now that in effect legitimize Iran's uranium enrichment program, which puts them in a position to break out and fabricate nuclear weapons very quickly. They're a lot closer than a year away. The administration is still clinging to the idea. Director of National Intelligence Clapper testified to it about 10 days ago, that Iran has still not yet made a decision to create a nuclear weapon. Well, if you believe that, then you can say, obviously, it's a year from the date they actually decide. You don't accidentally build a nuclear weapon. I think they made the decision about 10 or 20 years ago, and the administration's unwillingness to confront that, I think, hobbles our ability to do anything about it.
Ambassador Bolton, while we're in the region there, these reports are coming in from Syria now that the rebels potentially use chemical weapons, and there's a move in Congress, specifically Representative Rogers out of Michigan wants to actually get involved there. What should the president do about Syria? Do we even know who these rebels are and whether they're good guys or bad guys?
Well, I don't think we know enough about them to trust providing them with lethal assistance. Frankly, I wouldn't provide them with much of anything until we got some assurances they wouldn't conduct a bloodbath of the Christian and Druze and Alawite supporters of Assad if they did take power, and that they commit to destroying these chemical weapons. I think with respect to this claim by Assad that the rebels used chemical weapons, we obviously don't know enough at this point to know what the facts are. The rebels obviously claim that it was Assad that used it. We've got our ambassador to Syria in Washington, but saying he doesn't have evidence yet that chemical weapons were actually used. So we don't really know. But I think Congressman Rogers' point is a very important one. The key American interest here is making sure these chemical weapons or precursor chemicals, anything associated with that program, don't get outside of Syria, don't fall into the hands of Al-Qaeda or other terrorists that they could use worldwide. And that's why I think when Congressman Rogers talks about the need for military action to destroy the chemical weapons, that it's very dangerous, it's very dicey, but I think it's something we've got to look at, not to go after Assad, not to back the rebels, but to focus on what our interest is, which is making sure those weapons are never used against us.
You know, in North Korea yesterday, 2 o'clock local time, computer screens around the country went blank. There are even some reports that, just like in the movies, skulls popped up on the computer screens, and it basically a cyber attack that shut down the entire banking system in South Korea. They haven't done all of the work they need to do to absolutely confirm it, but it beginning to look more and more like this was an attack, a cyber attack of North Korea against South Korea. We keep hearing that we're not ready for such a cyber attack. This is a serious national security concern, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's not clear whether what happened in South Korea is coming from North Korea or from China. It almost doesn't make any difference. The nature of the attack, I thought, was significant. It was not against military targets, at least as far as we know. It was against the banking system. It was against things that affect average South Koreans. And I think it was intended to scare and intimidate them, much as you can imagine that kind of attack having that effect here in the United States. So I do believe that the situation on the Korean Peninsula is getting riskier.
But could that happen here?
Oh, absolutely. Look,
we're not ready, are we?
We are not. We have finally recognized we've got a problem. I think we are making efforts, but nobody should be under any illusions here. We're way behind China and other countries, Russia, possibly Iran, possibly North Korea, both in terms of defensive capabilities and in terms of offensive cyber capabilities.
Boy, we've got tensions between North Korea and South Korea at its highest point. We've got North Korea testing weapons. We've got the Chinese stealing aerospace secrets. We've got possible chemical weapons used in Syria. We've got Iran close to a nuke. We've got tensions between Israel and the Palestinians and our own government. That Hillary Clinton really was the best Secretary of State ever, wasn't she, Ambassador Bolton?
Yeah, look, she's clearly qualified to be president in 2016. Let's get on the bandwagon right now.